Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime. We want to buckle down now to a discussion of the day inside Ugali's politics and Uhuru deal on Ugali. Let's hear what the president had to say yesterday in this regard and how Kenyans also have relief with unga prices.
Territory of the Republic of Kenya at the price of Kenya shillings 100, down from Kenya shillings 205 for a 2 kg packet until otherwise directed. This program of a subsidy of approximately 105 shillings per 2 kg pack of maize meal is meant to lower the cost of living for vulnerable households as we look for a sustainable solution to the recurrent rising prices of unga every election. And to this end, I invite all of them to join the community not of mourners or grumblers, even when you serve in government, but I ask you all to join the community of solution givers, for this is where the future of our country lies.
Serikali imetukalisha kwa muda wa siku 4-5 hivi kuangalia suluhu ya kutafuta kushukisha bei ya chakula muhimu zaidi hapa kwetu. Na kama Bwana Rais alivyosema, serikali hii haijatulia mpaka leo. Ukiangalia vitu vyote Rais alivyovisema ni vitu ambavyo kwamba amevifanya kwa sababu roho yake yenyewe inawapenda nyinyi wa Kenya. Si kwa sababu amelazimishwa na mtu afanye. Mtu huyo anaweza kusema tu si ndio bei, kwa hivyo lazima upigane tu. Lakini amesema la.
That's the reality on the ground right now. We just want to hear from our panelists. What is the assessment with this particular subsidy? Is it sustainable right now? People are saying this is all politics. We can read through the tea leaves. It is not something that is done out of a pure heart, according to the other side of the divide. This is political, right? And President Uhuru Kenyatta has been very categorical, telling the president, do not politicize. Telling the deputy president to not politicize, that is maize flour or unga for that matter. Patikobath.
I think and fortunately enough, I happen to sit in the unga business somewhere, right? And
you have a portion meal.
A portion meal at home.
It's the best maize, by the way.
I think the reality here is that the cost of raw material is the biggest driver of the price of unga in this country, the price of maize. And there are two things. Currently, the global price of maize has gone stratospheric.
Yes.
Right? So even whatever we do in the country is not going to change that reality. Mm-hmm. Internal production also, whilst it may be take about 70% of what you consume, and you have to import about 30%. That 70%, the internal consumption, we have a challenge in that most of our productive areas in Kenya have got aflatoxin. So the maize that comes out of almost, if you look at the total amount of arable area for that is under maize, only about 30 to 40% of it can produce maize that can be eaten by human beings. So in order to get this down, a lot of things have to happen. But the reality is that currently, doesn't matter how you chop and change it. All the subsidies, all the levies that were removed, only dropped the price by 2 shillings. Only. So the subsidy is subsidizing the cost of the raw material. And that 100 shillings or so that is going on is the reality of the difference between the local production cost or the local production that we normally do when you have a bumper harvest and the real price globally that is sitting now. And a lot of the maize is actually coming from Zambia. Not even Tanzania, where it used to come from before. It's coming from Zambia. Right? And imagine that trucking from Zambia to here. So the government has done what it has to do, which is actually subsidize maize, but it is not sustainable. Because that level, if the global prices are going to stay where they are, and they will, until this Russia-Ukraine thing is sorted out, you cannot continue subsidizing maize at 50% of its value over the long term. The country can't afford it. So we really need, again, to get some innovations in terms of how we go over this issue. And there are various things that have been talked about. It is not just subsidizing maize. We have to change what we eat. That's the big thing. Should you go to potatoes, there's beans, there's sorghum, there's all these other items that when you look at them on a normal basis, they're at a much lower cost than maize. Secondly, maize to be grown at a level that can go cheaply into the market has to be grown at scale. So Kulalu, that was this famous thing that has been bandied around, was a great idea, but it should not be done by the government.
It should not be done by the government.
No, it should not be done by the government. It should be done by private sector, right? And they should be very clear, right, that you will get a minimum of 5,000 hectares or something big enough. And you have to produce on that. It's not a question of giving people 100 here, 200 there. You've got to come in at scale. That's the next thing that has to happen. So we need to get people who can produce at scale. If you remember the days when Narok used to be the wheat basket of the country.
Yes.
People actually went to rent land and they used to grow a lot of wheat until the rentals hit the roof. Then they left. The last thing on this whole issue, people are talking about our grain reserves and so forth and so on. And this is also the same as I talk about fuel. It is not the business of the government to hold reserves. Globally, the way countries are holding reserves is not by the government doing it. We have great global traders. You got the Cargills of this world, you got all these other people who actually trade grain. The clever countries have actually incentivized those people to come and put their trading facilities, all the silos and everything else where they store their grain and do all that in country. So if you can imagine a global organization, Seaboard, Cargill, all these people, they come into the country, they are told that this is an EPZ or an SPZ, whatever. Like say in Lamu, they are given a space to build a world-class storage facility.
Yes.
And what they do is they trade through that place. But as a country, we pay a small amount for them to hold a critical reserve for us in that place.
Yes, sure.
So we don't invest in the infrastructure. All we do is we just tell them, we will pay you so many millions a year, and when we need it, it's got to be there. And we will buy it off you at that price.
Good point.
Then the government does not invest and does not run it with all the risks of the stuff going off. You lose a crop, you lose this and the other. Let the professionals run that. And if we think those ways, then I think within about 3 years, we will have a situation whereby we can stabilize the prices in Kenya. But if we don't think outside the box, this circus we're seeing now of prices going up and down will continue.
Will continue. All right. So, but the question will be again when we're talking about Galana Kulalu, we had the best expertise from Israel that we thought would have actually carried the day. They've never failed anywhere in the world in terms of any project they've been given. So wasn't that also the wisest of fashion to do it? But they failed because of also the underhandings from
it is we Kenyans who made it fail. It's not the Israelis who came. The people who are demanding cuts in that particular thing, and I'm now wearing my private sector hat. We know these things. People demanded money from those companies for them to be able to operate. They were not given a deal which was clean, and then they were told, now go ahead and do it. Yeah? You don't create a football team to go and play football, and then you go and start telling them on the field, yeah, you must score through that route, not this one. Yeah, leave the professional to do his job.
You're liking analogy of football today.
Yeah, me today, football has become my thing. Yeah, because it's understood. You don't go and tell the player how to play. Yeah, and you don't demand that, you know, out of the money that you're going to make out of playing, yeah, you give me my cut. Yeah, that is agreed up front in terms of the commission that comes through, and that should be on the table and clear, so that when I do my business plan for that place, I have included all those costs, and I tell you, if you want all those commissions, this is going to be your final price of what comes out.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's we have to be different and approach it differently.
All right. So, do you, looking at your tea leaves, do you see politics in this?
I don't see politics. I think it's the fact that it just had to happen.
Look at fuel.
Fuel, when the levy came in, was that politics? It wasn't. Kenyans were raising hell.
In fact, the first subsidy should have been food.
Yeah.
Not fuel.
Yeah.
Because everybody eats.
Yeah.
Not everybody goes to a gas station.
Yeah, but fuel came in purely because there was a levy that was already there. So it was easy, there's money available.
But I think but the point he's making, and I think we need to have a debate to distinguish, who is complaining is political. Is a Mwananchi Kibera saying is political? No, because they know what it means. They are going and buying the maize. Let Bio and I, who are just meandering as politicians, make the noise. But the Mwananchi is happy that I can buy that unga.
Yeah.
So when you want to call it, to go to the public, you want to call it, it's political because the elections are the corner. I really don't buy it. But the point I didn't want to stress is what Patrick is saying. It's good to give her this subsidy. IMF just bailed out Pakistan. They are almost concluding now with Sri Lanka.
Yes.
They've just kicked in here. And it's all coming to this issue of the grain. Let me bring this, and you're right, Diba, that the guy of the Israelites were really disappointed with rural Garana farm. When Uchumi was collapsing, the chair of then, and she was Catherine Gaho, was the chair of Uchumi. She actually had investors who actually wanted to come in and look at Uchumi. And what really made her quit? 3 times she brought investors. But whoever was coming in, the horses were saying, before we come in, we want this upfront. They said, sure, it's not possible. Let me make some money. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about when you talk about that food security. And we fought for it. I remember I was in government then for the Vision 2030. Really, we saw this as an opportunity. Those are, the soil is rich. Per acre, you get a lot of kind of in terms of the bags. All what we required was water. And Patrick is spot on. When you ask me something up front to read it, let me first even make something out of it. So the whole narrative for Uchumi went well. And I think at the bottom line, yes, let's provide subsidy as we talk right now, but let's be more strategic what we'll do now the road. Right now, I think we are in a difficult position in terms of ensuring there's food on the table. What are we doing by that? We are stopping food riots. We are really. So if you're in your campaign, you want this, go shout there. But me in Kibera, or where you come from, I'm feeding. It was a very interesting question asked by this guy. I think the guy from the Nation was asking the 2 debate, what's the price of milk, of a packet of milk? Some of them have no clue how much it costs. So when you say it's a political, I think it's, to me, is an issue.
Right. So you've been also on record saying that maybe we need to change, from this staple food of maize, ugali, and go for rice as it is. I think it's Ghana or Zimbabwe. Right now, they've decided they're going to go the millet way.
No, it's assuming the Green Revolution. If you look at the Green Revolution, the early 60s, Green Revolution in East Africa, East Asia countries, that was it all. I've said this, and I think it's almost becoming like a punchline. If I put unga ya ugali hapa, it cannot even feed me. And I'm not a serious ugali eater. If I put mchere here, it can feed the 3 of us. So stretch it. How much can we get in an acre of mchere as opposed to maize. We have to think. But there are areas in this country which are extremely good in maize production. And my mind goes to the farms. Maize is a crop where you can do large-scale farming. Kitare. Why can't we, for production, then when we have produced, then we can distribute in other areas. But the fundamental question, or rather fundamental issue, you cannot provide subsidy at the consumption. No, it doesn't work like that.
Thank you.
You actually provide subsidy at the production, if you have to, but not at the consumption level. Because as you say, there's a whole supply chain. You have the right preparation, you have the growing, the storage, then you have the supply chain until you reach the customer. Now, if you don't address all that, then I'm providing at the tail end the subsidy.
There is something else as well. I mean, I've been involved in an organization.
Can I from Bilo, then I come to you?
Yeah,
Just all, yeah. Bilo, you want to comment on that as well?
He doesn't buy my idea of mchere and Ugali, but
No, I'm an Ugali favorite, but
It's your favorite, is it?
oh yes. Now, you know, gentlemen, let's not. I think in this country we engage in a lot of escapism. We blame, corruption for everything nowadays. We blame. I don't think, personally, I share that view. I think there are serious policy failures by government. And failures by government in implementing even those, some of those policies, whether they are sound or not. That has been the reason why, after pumping hundreds of billions into this big four agenda, food security was the main item.
Correct.
4 years of pumping hundreds of billions. Today, we are a basket case. We have never been this deficient in maize in the history of this country. I mean, even in all those years of Moi and those crises, they have always managed to have food, grain, national cereals and produce. I've always managed to buy maize. Millers have always managed to get something. Imports were limited and controlled until very recently. Today, we have a situation where there is literally a crisis. And in my view, this subsidy is not going to help. And of course, you can excuse those people who say it's political because of the timing, but we cannot run a nation on subsidies. You cannot have a subsidy for power lighting to reduce bills. You can have subsidy for fertilizer. You have a subsidy for fuel. You have subsidy for maize. The solution for this government is just to try and is knee-jerk. And everybody can see, it's stopgap. You cannot run a nation like that. You must plan as a country, as a government, come up with policies to address these challenges. So I think, calculating, when I just do the numbers, in studies that have been done on the food consumption, the Ugali consumption in Kenya is an average of about between 5 to 10 kilograms per person per capita. When you work out on those figures, clearly this government will need 20 to 30 billion. That 1 month that they have declared they will give subsidy. This is a government that is already struggling, to provide stationery in their offices. So, how long will you sustain that kind of program? So, I think these are all misplaced priorities. We have a nation that is collecting adequate revenue, more revenue than the entire East African countries, all the 5 countries combined, over $30 billion. And you cannot provide basic. Food security is one of the fundamental things. So we have a situation where we have to be treated to, these stories of stopgap on subsidy on everything. Tomorrow they'll say we need another subsidy for, for water, for gas. We can't run the nation that way. I think it's really misplaced. And I think, in my view, the government really, whichever government is coming in, this one is going out anyway. It really doesn't matter what they do now. But I think the government that is coming in has its task, cut out. Yes, because the challenges are going to be enormous. Yeah.
Right, Patrick, you wanted to say something? Then we wind up.
Yeah, and I think it follows on quite well with what Bilo said. Just looking at maize alone, look at the investment that was done years ago. You had the Katumanis, you had the whatever it is that was targeted for dry areas and so forth and so on. Now the Katumani didn't quite work. So we needed to continue doing research. And research has been done and maize varieties have been produced. But the reality is that most of the countries that are maize sufficient have got maize that has been genetically modified. whereby they build resistance to disease, capacity to produce, etc., in the DNA
Yes.
of the maize plant. Here we have steadfastly refused to allow any genetically modified organisms to come into the country. Recently we allowed cotton, and look at what it's doing to the cotton industry. That was basically because we wanted to revive Rivertex and Waterview and everything else. We allowed it to happen and said this is not going to go into the food chain, it's okay. Yeah? But the reality globally, places like South Africa and so forth, they don't have an issue because they've allowed, in a structured way, to have genetically modified maize. Why do we need it here? First of all, as I was saying earlier on, most of the areas that we used to grow maize has now got aflatoxin in the soil.
Yes.
And anything you grow, doesn't matter whether it's katumani, whatever it is, will have aflatoxin issues. So storage and the whole value chain has got to change. So we have to start, as Lilo quite rightly said, let's look at the whole policy and the management of maize in the country. We've got to look at the seed. That's the first thing. We've got to look at how we're going to treat the soil to make sure that the aflatoxin is reduced. The other thing again, and I know we've done research in this at an organization, Kenya Markets Trust, the issue of the soil condition. We need to lime in this country. And simply putting lime in the existing areas that we're growing in will increase production by 40%. That's all, nothing else.
And even the substitute, the others. And I like, indeed, when I was in the graduate school, my roommate, Lagwan, was was working on this. And I used to go to I was doing economics, and I used to go to the farm, and he was working on sorghum. And interesting, the sorghum had more return than maize. Yeah. So the alternative, the sorghum.
That's what I'm saying. Could we go the Ghana way?
The other one, and I ate chapati of cassava. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's another, and it does well in dry areas. Go to Kitui, those areas, they're doing it. So the alternatives. Below the modified, we have sorghum. If you eat ugali ya sorghum, come on, Kisi, Gikula Leo, you need another food on Saturday. So it stays in the stomach.
Because of the slogan.
And that saves a lot.
Yes. And in fact, these days you mix sorghum with cassava to make it a little bit easier to make the
Millable a bit.
They get a spoon.
I remember when we went to wedding for smoking wajara, the Supreme Court, the mzee, he is married from Kisi. The dad of the lady told us, eat this ugali. We were the big guys, driving. I know you'll be hungry the whole day, so eat this ugali. And surely, the whole day we were okay.
No, I think, Patrick, GMO is, look at the countries, the neighboring countries. They're not using GMO. But today, the last few years, we've been importing maize from Malawi, Zambia, Uganda. Ethiopia, countries really that, in terms of their development, you would say, in terms of their everything, you would say they probably are not anywhere comparable to Kenya. But those countries outperform us in terms of agricultural production. And this is why we are now getting, not only maize, by the way. Tanzania here, that has been a basket case many years ago. Today is supplying us everything from tomatoes to maize, to everything, to sugar, to rice. I mean, so it's about policy. I think the challenge we have in this country is a government that is not focused on the basics for the wananchi. When they get an opportunity, it's about looking for things where you can get some rent on. And I think that is where our challenge is. Look at the institutions we have, they're the best. Kari, Kenya Seeds, I mean, you can't get those institutions that are doing research in agriculture anywhere in this region. So it's not about lack of knowledge, it's not about, but it's about the way the government runs its affairs. And I think even if you are in private sector, Patrick, and you've got private sectors to come and invest in agriculture, I'm telling you, unless the government is serious in terms of policy, in terms of its priorities, you will still have all these challenges, in terms of, and this is the problem we have in this country.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, Malawi, in 4 years, transformed itself to one of the largest maize exporters in Africa. 4 years, and they're exporting more than Kenya. And all it focused on, the government decided they were going to become a net maize exporter and make it big. 4 years. Kenya, we
import sugar from them, we import maize from them.
And look, and it's a small country. So I agree with you that policy plays a very, very important part.
Even as we're winding up on it, because you raised a very important point on the storage and how aflatoxin, we found it also coming into the market because of pure storage at the end of the day. Question of the cancer burden has been related to this aflatoxin. I know of many patients that have gone to the hospital and the doctor has pointed out to, maize poisoning that has led to cancer and the burden of cancer right now, even to stage 4. People are really suffering. When we have such a condition where we know many Kenyans are suffering right now because of that, what will be a recourse for me as a consumer of a poisoned maize that the doctor said this was due because of aflatoxin? When we come to the source or sourcing of that food right to the retailer, what will be the recourse? I know it's a critical question.
You have to go to the US to learn those solutions.
So we don't really advance as the US in terms of
the United States,
the food administration,
who know how to do those kind of things, right? I mean, you go to the US and you look at TV and you're seeing all these lawyers who are keen, who will, if you just send them your case, and they'll go to and litigate for you, and they make a percentage. But
even just the litigation aside, because this is a critical thing that I think we need to really focus on when you're looking at our strategic reserves and how it is affecting Wananchi, who, unbeknownst to them, this is where the cancer is emanating from. Bilo.
But Bilo has said exactly what needs to happen. It's all within the policy of government. If you see, I mean, look at COVID. We react on emergencies.
When we talk about Patrick, when we talk about policy, I mean that is way too broad.
No, it's not broad.
Could we just focus on that particular storaging of the grains?
The storage of grain is a very simple technology.
Okay.
It is very simple. But when you understand that storage is what causes what you're talking about, the cancer at the far end, me as a policymaker, the government person in the middle, I have to take this whole thing and manage that supply chain and say, right from the place where it is grown, aflatoxin actually starts from there. And it appears in the chain when you don't manage it properly.
You know what I think Dibal is trying to, in horticulture, in fruits and vegetables, if we export mangoes from here, and the mango goes on a supermarket shelf in UK, and you buy and you find this, it's infected or it's got some. Do you know, it has to be traced right up to the farm from where that mango was harvested. Even in Kenya today, that is the system. You must provide details of your contract with the farmer, which farmer. The traceability is a critical thing in the entire export chain of in the horticulture industry. And this is basically what you're saying is, in this case, the challenge is in maize. Policy is a critical thing, because what happens is the farmers, for political reasons, must sell the food, the maize, to the government, the cereal board. The cereal board, because of political experience, must buy. So it's not a question of where your maize is wet, your maize meets the quality in terms of, they must buy maize at this price from the farmers every year, and then they store it. This purchasing of maize from farmers is a political decision, because government must help those farmers, and this is where the challenge is. And so, because of that process, National Cereal Board does not take precautions in terms of quality. And oftentimes you find them, with millions of bags that have been, damaged in terms of quality, in terms of aflatoxin, and they have to dispose of it. It happens every other year. So I think, but from your perspective, yes, government is the one responsible, because that is the maize that goes to the millers.
But I think the point
that's the maize which goes to the millers.
But the point that you are making, which I think make some kind of sense, it's great, it's beautiful to have a policy, but we must full implementation. That's the key. We could have, the policies, we have great policies in this country. great policies.
So as it is right now, Prof, we don't have any policy on traceability.
Not on cereals.
Not on cereals.
We have on the other products.
Which we should.
Which we should.
But it's something I probably want to share.
I think so.
I think
we should.
there has some work which has been done by Caro. Even notwithstanding what Patrick is saying, and they have done a lot of work with the whole concept of the food, the maize. And what they have found out really, and I know there have been cases is because of fertilizers we are using them, where they have cancer, and the results are showing probably not the case. So in terms of really what we need perhaps to do in this stage, and let's get the facts correct. Why do we have it here, not from Marawi? And we have the beautiful weather in terms of managing it. And I think the point Patrick was making, storage is the easiest thing to do. Really. It's the easiest thing to do. And it can be done. But let's proceed. And probably one of the things if I met Raila as he goes to his campaign, I remember one time when he was a prime minister, emphasized the issue of, he actually said his presentation of 3 things: implementation, implementation, implementation. Bill, we are alive. You made all these bills, you made all these policies.
Thank you.
How far have we pushed them?
No, you see, the question, you can, I can, if you are a particular consumer, if you are a consumer of a particular brand of, say, of Ugali, and ultimately you end up with this problem of cancer, the doctors tied to that Ugali. Yes, that one would be very easy, because that Ugali, then you know the miller, and the millers have a record of where they buy their unga from. Consistently, it's either from national cereal boards or if it's imported, then they know which import they bought from. So it can be linked directly to which company or which particular institution provided that, and they can then take action. Right. That's possible, yeah. But if you have to be,
so someone has to be responsible. At the end of the day.
Ultimately, yes.
So we can't get all these poisoned,
Oh yes,
sugar.
and it's a major problem now.
With mercury in the
cancer
market.
is a major problem. It's a crisis.
It's wiping out families, finances, resources, as it is. Thank you very much. Now, Deputy